Welcome to the 3BA podcast, where bourbon boners and being awesome isn't just a catchy tagline, but categories in which we discuss different topics every single day. My name's Garrett, and I'm going to be your host along this unique journey through the bourbon and whiskey craze, men's health, and everything that life throws at you in between. Next to me here is a regular co-host. His name is Nick, and he is here for your Thursday edition of your bourbon side of the 3BA podcast. Nick, how is it going, my friend?
It's funny how fast the weeks have gone.
It is. The weeks just fly by. We're already into week. This is your third?
Number three.
Number 3? Man, 3 episodes in. Last ones, we talked about getting into bourbon. I love that because I got you into bourbon. Please tell the people that I got you into bourbon. That's all I'm looking for.
So if he had a baseball card on the back, it would say his batting average is 0, but he got Nick into bourbon.
That is true. Yes, batting average is 0, but I got Nick into bourbon. I'll take it. I'll take whatever credit that I can get for your, what would we call this? Your side hustle, your passion, your new, actually, there you go. Your newfound passion of American spirits.
We'll go with that.
I like it. See, that was my very suave way of saying this. On today's episode, we're going to do something. We're going to address an issue today.
Uh-oh.
Yes. You and I have discussed this. We've been asked this. And it's oh my gosh. It is it's a common question that people who are in this world get asked on a regular basis.
What's this line for?
Oh, also that. But it's also a question that drives specifically me nuts. You know what the question is before I ask it and tell the people? Does it drive you nuts, or are you just...
I think I know the question, and I don't think I've ever said the same answer.
I haven't either. So the question is this, and this is what today's episode is all about. What is your favorite bourbon? Or what's your favorite? Oh my gosh. If there's anything that I can say to anybody out there who might be new into bourbon or who's been into bourbon for a long time, that question drives me up the wall. I would never let it... You probably see it on my face because I'd probably give a reaction that I'm annoyed, but I would never tell that person that I'm annoyed, because I jokingly blow it off and give them one of two set answers that I think I have for this question.
Well, give me at least one.
I'm going to give you the one that I was told by a gentleman early on in my career when I was doing a bourbon tasting. Someone asked him this question. He got really annoyed, and his immediate response was, whichever one is in my glass. I think that's a great response. What bourbon's your favorite? Whichever one I'm drinking. Whichever one right now. And his reasoning behind it was this, which makes a lot of sense. Do you eat the same thing for dinner every single night?
No.
Why would I drink the same bourbon every single night?
I mean, there probably is that guy.
There are exceptions, but I've personally never met a bourbon drinker in this community that has only had one bourbon their entire career.
How many bottles you got?
Yeah,
1?
Exactly, 1. I have 75 of them. No, that question just makes me it's not that I don't want to tell somebody my favorite bourbons. I have a lot of them. I enjoy so many bourbons. There are some that I think I rank higher than others, but none of them could I sit here and tell you that's my absolute favorite.
What if they pinned you into a corner and said price range, age, mash bill, maybe even within a label? At that point, would it help or would it hurt the conversation?
I think it would help. If you were to come to me with some bourbon knowledge and say, hey, what's your favorite Buffalo Trace product? Or what's your favorite bourbon under $50? Or what's your favorite bourbon that you get in an old fashioned? I can answer all those questions. I like those questions. But what's your favorite is just such a hard question. I'm going to ask you before. I'm going to have you think about it. We didn't talk about this, so I'm going to have you think about it while we're talking about other things. I have a top 5 that I've acquired over my time because of that question. I've had so many people ask me that question. I have a top 5. We don't have to go through our top 5. That could be a whole nother episode. But I give price range top 3. So I'm going to help you out. So by the end of this episode, let's do price range top 3. So here are your price ranges. You ready? 50 and under, 50 to 200,
Oh,
and then 200 and up.
yeah, that middle range that's fighting grounds.
Well, think about it. And now I'm going to pose a couple other things to you. So that question elicits a response in me of annoyance. And I'm not saying this to people out there because I'm going to get a million of them in the comments whenever this goes out. What's your favorite bourbon? I know. Listen, I would never insult you. I would never say to you, oh, you're a novice or you don't know what is. I would never do that. My reason for having this discussion is to try to get you to ask other questions. Everybody, I think, in this community, most people in this community are nice and we're all drinking bourbon together, and they would answer that question. And I answer that question too after giving my smart response of whichever one's in my glass. But I give some examples. That's why I asked you to think of your 3. But in your experience, how many times you've been in this significantly shorter than I have? How many times have you been asked that question? Would you say it's almost every single time you're in?
No, it's not that violent. I would say at least bi-weekly. Every 2 weeks, somebody floats that question. And again, I think it's funny because I don't think I've ever given somebody the same answer as the
Twice.
person before. It's something that I drank in the past 2 weeks and I thought it was really good, and so that's what's on my mind. Here you go.
See, I get that, and I respect that. I think that's a honest answer. Oh yeah, my favorite this week is, Angel's Envy Rye because it was just perfect the other night after dinner. It was great. So Angel's Envy Rye is my favorite. So I believe that your taste could change. We've talked about in previous episodes how your tastes have evolved. That question. For everybody out there, let's try to ask some different ones.
I got a question for you.
With that in mind, yes, go right ahead.
So the first 2 episodes,
Yeah.
we start with Bardstown Discovery 2,
Oh,
and then 4.
gosh.
But tonight,
That's right.
tonight we got to choose what we put
Oh,
in our
we
glass.
did. I am so sorry. I think we need to figure out how, when we start talking, we should probably start doing like a bourbon acknowledgement right before we even start the episode. I need to work on that.
No, I think it's like rising action, and now the climax is, well, what's in the glass?
All right, fair. What's in the glass? So here, I'll let you go first. Hey, Nick, what did you choose for this evening?
Well, we are firmly into the fall or autumn season, as some would say. And for me, one that I think I've mentioned before on an episode, and getting into the fall here is one that I just have fallen in love with, has been Chattanooga's 111. It's got the darker notes to it. It hangs with you, gives you good, well, I suppose it might be a Tennessee hug,
It is.
if that's a thing. But that's what I chose for tonight. Chattanooga whiskey, 111.
So I let him slide. I said, hey, pick whatever you want tonight. I was going to pour it. We've done a few episodes together where he's picked and I've picked, and he goes, okay, I'm going to pick Chattanooga. I said, it's Tennessee whiskey. He goes, yeah, but bourbon recipe, right? Chattanooga does bourbon?
Very
They do
much
bourbon
so.
recipe? Yeah.
Straight bourbon.
So tonight I went with something a little different. I'm going off of our last conversation. You inspired me because you brought up something that we'll talk about again later on, but you brought up Bottled and Bond. And since that time, I have been on a Bottled and Bond kick where I've been trying to taste the couple different Bottled and Bonds that I have. And the one that sticks out for me that I know a few of you out there may have had, and I know a few of you out there really enjoy, But it's the 1792 Bottled and Bond. So that's what I picked tonight. I'm drinking 1792 Bottled and Bond. It comes with a yellow label for those of you who may or may not know what that bottle is. You know what? Let's do something tonight. Go ahead and grab your bottle. I'm going to grab mine. You can show the people. You can put them right here on the bar. There it is. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll pull them from underneath from now on. I think that'll be a cool, nifty little trick. But there you go. Those are what we're drinking tonight. Bottled and Bond, in case you can't see that. And Chattanooga for Nick. But yeah, before we continue, cheers. That's a great question that you asked, though. So now let's ask some other questions. Why don't we ask the questions that we have discussed that we would prefer you ask when you're discussing bourbon? So I'm going to let you go first. Go ahead and think of one question. Instead of what's your favorite bourbon, what's a good question for you to ask me instead of what's your favorite bourbon?
What do you believe is your preferred age range of a bourbon?
Oh, wow. That's not something that we discussed prior to this episode. Wow. That's a good question. That's a great question. I don't know that I could tell you an age range that I prefer over another. I could tell you the age ranges that I am not especially fond of. So I guess in the middle.
All right.
So the law is 2 years and older. I have found a few, not many, that are aged in that 2 to 4 year range that are good. Now, before we get all technical, do I go through every single bottle I have and research the age? No. But I will say I have found at 7 years, for whatever reason, I have some examples, and I think you know one of my favorites, but at 7 years, I've found a particular uptick in my enjoyment of the product. Also, on the high side, I think 23 years is a little too much. At some point in this episode, we're going to discuss a product that's aged 22 years, but that 23rd year, for me, some specific products, is not as flavor positive for me. I'm not saying it's flavor negative, but I prefer 7 to 22 years.
I think there's probably a sweet spot in there
Sure.
where things are mature enough
I agree.
and grow in flavor and depth and boldness and everything like that. But then you do get to this weird crossroad where it becomes this whole like, okay, is this going to take a hard left, a hard right, a corkscrew down, or is it going to stay on level?
Agreed.
And so I think there is this pivotal point where it decides what it's going to do in the barrel. And so I don't think it's fair on the high end to hold you to a specific number to say, hey, if you said 18, well, something over 18, you can't love that.
There's a couple 18, 17-year products that I'm not especially fond of. But then there's, like I said, a 22-year product that I adore. So take that for what it's worth.
So you grabbed Bottled and Bond and threw it in your glass
did.
tonight, which would be on the lower side of your range.
It is.
So
2 to 4 years, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. So, and that's just to say that even when you pick something, your favorite tonight was something that was in that
Absolutely.
range.
You're absolutely right. For you, I'm gonna retort and ask you, just for continuance sake, what would your age range do you think?
6 to 15,
Okay.
maybe 16. Just because then she can drive.
Oh my goodness. 6 to 16 year bourbon aging. Got it. I have another question. So instead of what's your favorite bourbon, what's the last bottle that you bought that made you go, wow?
That's easy. That's easy. I think we mentioned them last time. We're gonna bring them up to the.
Well, yeah, I did. Well, yes, but I'm just saying.
We're gonna.
Well, no, you don't have to bring
product placement
No,
here.
it's fine.
So
All
it's
right. Okay.
Barrel Armida. So
Okay.
Barrel Seagrass got a lot of attention. Some of these are rye blends that they triple finish and everything. This one happens to be finished in pear brandy, rum, and Sicilian Amaro casks. And it's a party in your mouth. I loved it. I drank it too fast. Probably need to find me another one.
Well, there you go. If you finish this pour, you can pour yourself a glass of that. I would say that to answer the question that I just asked you, I appreciate you being very super specific on the last bottle that you bought that tasted delicious. I'm going to tell you that the last bottle that I purchased, it's actually not here. I left it. I left it at a football watching. We watched the game. I went over to a friend's house for a party, just a football. We watched the game on a particular night, and I actually don't even see another bottle of it up here. But it was. This is going to sound kind of funny. Wild Turkey 101. I don't have the Shelfer Wild Turkey 101. Don't yell at me. Don't get angry with me. But I was always into Wild Turkey, and then out of nowhere, somebody said their 101 is delicious. There are a ton of reviews out there on it, and I was at the store. It's a Shelfer. It's everywhere. You can always get it. I drank it neat, and then I tried it with some rocks. It was delicious. It's a very inexpensive bottle. Left it at the party I was at. He didn't have Wild Turkey, and I was pouring it in people's glasses and just not challenging them, but I said, tell me what you think, and everybody loved it.
Does that come in a 1 liter?
I think it does.
I have this weird suspicion that things that do come in a 1 liter actually are really good. Because
that's a bold statement.
You clearly just want a little more than a 750 mil.
I guess that's not far-fetched.
Name me a 1 liter that's atrocious.
I can't really name one that's atrocious, but I can name a couple that are delicious. One right off the bat, Mellow Corn. I love Mellow Corn. Not really a bourbon, but Mellow Corn in a 1 liter, all day.
Buffalo Trace.
Oh yeah, 1 liter? For sure, all day.
Weller Special Reserve.
Weller Antique, you can get in 1 liters.
Ancient Age.
Oh, that's another good one.
Early Times. Bib.
Yeah, a little early times back there.
Yeah, that's a 1 liter.
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
I think that trend holds.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first. Hashtag 1 liters or better.
Not a hot take.
1 liters are better. All right, your turn. You got another question other than what's your favorite?
Let's go down this route.
Sure.
Weeder or no weeder?
Well, that's a preference, and that's also I would say I think for both of us, I won't answer for you. I'll say for me. For me, it changes. In a previous episode, you talked about ryes. I don't dislike ryes, but I love the wheaters. So, wheaters. I love the wheaters.
I would concur.
Okay.
Wheat seems to make things a lot better.
I agree. That's a good question. So here, this is another one that I thought of earlier that I think is appropriate. What was the last pour you paid for at a bar/restaurant? I'm asking you, but I'm saying that's another question instead of while he's thinking about it. That's another question that you can ask that I think for the people who have been drinking bourbon for a while, I think they would appreciate you instead of saying, what's your favorite bourbon? What's the last one you paid for? I have been out many a night with different people in this community, and you look, the first thing you go in at a bar or a restaurant and you go, okay, what do they have? I have found, and you can agree or disagree, but I've found that most bar menus, well, for lack of a better word, are not up to date. You could see I don't know, let's just say Weller 12. That's a one that people like to try and find if they can't find it, right? They have a Weller 12 sitting on their bar, but it's not listed in their menu because they got one bottle of it in the last year. So, again, I think this question is great. You also discussed on a previous episode about me finding a pour of something that's relatively rare for a very low price because they've had it for, I think it's been around for 10 years. But they had it and it wasn't on their menu. So, back to my question.
So I'm going to answer this in a different way.
Sure.
That I think brings about a good point. And they're not pours that I bought for myself, that were bought for me by the company or the host.
Okay.
So first would be 2020 George T. Stagg.
Okay.
It was
Antique collection.
It was actually the first George T. Stagg I'd ever had.
Okay.
It was a full 2-ounce pour, and it was before the market on those went kind of crazy and nearly doubled.
Do you happen to remember, for the bourbon purists out there, do you happen to remember what year the George T. Stagg
2020.
was? Oh, it was a 2020. Okay, did you say that?
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
So, not mad about it. Not mad about it at all.
Yeah.
The second one was actually also a first. Parker's Heritage Collection,
Okay.
heavy char,
Yeah.
11-year weeded.
Okay.
And
The heavy char was something that they added on there. Was that marketing, you think, or it was just because they wanted to let people know they added the char level up to their barrel?
I don't care. It's good. It's great.
Okay.
It's probably top 5 for me,
Wow.
and I'd have to really think about the order at which the top is.
Really?
It was excellent.
I did not know this about you.
So, hat tip to my friend who put me through that experience, and he also liked it enough to pursue a bottle of it. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to tell you the last one for me that I paid for as a pour. It was a pick. So we're going to do a whole episode, by the way. We're going to do a whole episode on picks versus regular bottles.
Oh, you should throw single barrels in there too. I love that topic.
Oh gosh. But it was a pick, and it was a Woodford double oak pick. I am a Woodford fan. We'll talk about that on another episode too. There's a lot of, again, we need to really start taking notes on other episodes. But I'm a Woodford double oak fan. Preferred in my old fashions. That was a great question you asked earlier, by the way. Preferred in my old fashions. And it was a pick done here locally in town by a restaurant group. And that restaurant group, I really enjoy. They have a great fillet, and they also had a single barrel or specific pick for them for Woodford double oaked, and that was one that I tried. So I'm glad that we talked about this because the two that you mentioned, very high end, unique, rare bottles.
Especially if you take into consideration my normal price range.
Exactly. Oh, I know. I know you very well. Me, this bottle you could find on most shelves across the country, but this one just happened to be a unique pick, and it was one that I wanted to try. So those are two very, very different answers. But I enjoyed that. That actually makes my point a little more valid. There's so many better questions to ask than what's your favorite. I think that one, you just kind of surprised me there. I like that one.
All right, I'm going to stay on the train I'm on.
Let's hear it.
Sour mash or not?
You already know what my answer is.
Yeah, I do.
My answer is a hell no. I do not want sour mash. I am not a sour mash guy. I have not met a sour mash that I've enjoyed. Come at me, please. Hashtag me. Send me your recommendations. I have not met a sour mash that I've enjoyed. Come try it anytime you want. You and the bottles again.
All right, so you own this guy. He's pretty full, but
He is.
I'm going to go out and say that this is one that actually does a pretty good job. I believe this is a sour mash.
It may be, but it's marketed as a malted.
Well, that only helps.
A malted sour mash? Could be. Okay. I know where you land, but just for the sake of continuity, sour mash or not.
I have had enough weird ones to understand your answer, but will not exclude them from the test basin. But do I actively pursue them? No, I wouldn't say I do.
Okay. I mean, I don't either. I don't actively pursue them. All right, I got one more for you. One more for this better than what's your favorite episode. And then remember your top 3. We're going to go through that. What bourbon? Actually, I'm going to alter my question. What bourbon do you give to your guests when they come to your house and say, "Hey, pour me a bourbon off of your bar cart"?
So if they're asking for it,
or what can you pour me? So I'm supposed to ask you a question. Sorry, Jeopardy rules. What bourbon do you have in your decanter? What's on your bar cart over there?
so I don't necessarily fill a decanter anymore. But when I did, it was one of 3 things. And the reason it was one of these 3 things is it was a bourbon that then I was like, I don't care what you do with it. You can mix 1 ounce with a 2 liter of Coke, and I don't care. You do you.
Yeah.
From the bottom, Benchmark, Buffalo Trace product.
Okay.
Plastic bottle, can't even break it if you try.
Yeah.
I'd say the next step up there would be my Ancient Age.
Yeah. 10 star.
Love it or hate it, low proof, easy sipping, have it any which way you want. The third one is going to play into my final answer today.
Okay.
That is Evan Williams, Bottled in Bond.
All right.
So,
On my bar cart, you know mine, but I've already alluded to one. Woodford Double Oaked is on my bar cart. Love Woodford Double Oaked. It's its own decanter. Love it. Also on my bar cart, by the way, found out, bottled in Tennessee. I.W. Harper.
explains things.
Love I.W. Harper. Love it or hate it, as Nick said. Very low proof, low price, bargain bottle. We're going to talk about that answer here in a second. And then the other one. Do you know what my third one is? I'm not even going to have you guess. It is Jim Beam White Label.
White label.
It is Jim Beam. Bottom shelfer, white label Jim Beam. Here's why. When people come over, it's not to be an ass. It's just for purely to
Baseline?
kind of gauge, yes.
That's your baseline.
It is.
All right.
Is, hey, just pour me something off your bar cart, and I pour them Jim Beam, and they go, this tastes familiar. Not really high proof. Well, I mean, mediocre proof. And, yeah, it's Jim Beam. If they can pick that out, awesome. Let's step it up. If they're like, this is fantastic. Okay, glad you like it.
Keeping you here.
Yeah, we're going to stay here. Put some Coke in it if you want.
So your other question though
yeah,
was
that's where we're gonna go.
What do you pour somebody who comes over and says, "Just pour me something"?
Yeah.
And I think for me, Woodford is one of those that is a nice introduction into bourbon for
I agree.
many. It's probably the sweeter front end. It's very pleasant. It's not high proof, harsh, bitey, anything like that. So I don't disagree that that's an excellent choice. For me, it depends on what's open, to be honest.
Yeah, I can get on that train.
Certainly am not pouring my usual high proof rye
Yeah.
type stuff. Kind of the opposite end, but I do want to give them something that is true to the provenance that it is. So I give them something that is Kentucky bourbon, something that's 100 proof or less. Something that they could find too if they like it. I don't want them to not be able to go get more of it.
I agree.
So I think if you play within those guidelines, that's a nice introduction to somebody. Again, if it's the person who took you out for George T. Stagg or Parker's Heritage Collection, right? It might be come take your choice.
Yeah.
So at that point, the gloves are off, and again,
Depends on the guest. Yeah, I get it. Depends on the guest and the level.
the other one too, I think, is if you want somebody to experience bourbon in a way that's probably been turned to whiskey at this point, whether it's been blended or finished or something different with the mash bills to it, but just expand their thought of bourbon to be slanted towards some other options. And I think what you mentioned earlier with old fashions gives me a question for you, and
All
that
right.
is, if you were to pick a flavored old fashioned, what flavor old fashioned is it for you?
So you're alluding to another episode we're going to do, but I'm okay with it. And then I want you to make sure you have your top 3. We're going to end our episode here with those. But I will answer your question. There is locally an orange vanilla old fashioned that I go out of my way to get. Orange vanilla old fashioned. And this particular bourbon bar, one of the best bourbon selections in this city, is known for making their own syrup mix and their own, I don't know if it's their own bitters, but this orange vanilla old fashioned is fantastic. If you wanted to be, I did also try one literally Thursday night this past week, not tonight, last Thursday after, well, we talked after, but Thursday night, it was a black cherry. They had made it a fall old fashioned, and it was primarily black cherry. So they used black cherry bitters, and then they had Luxardo cherries in it. But the black cherry was the most recent. But if I were to tell you my best flavor, it would be orange vanilla. What about
All
you?
right, you said Luxardo cherry, right?
Well, that's a whole different conversation.
It might be a whole different conversation, but I, for one, have not met another cherry that stands a chance.
Oh,
and so
hands.
I'll open it up to you guys. Hit us with better cherries.
Get us better cherries. I would love to try them. If you say maraschino and you give me those light pink fluorescent, oh, I'm just gonna laugh.
I've grabbed some sour cherries.
Oh.
Those wild cherries.
Oh yeah, like a black cherry or a wild cherry.
And
Yeah.
just for me, Luxardo or nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a bourbon snob. I don't think. I'm a cherry snob.
We're getting you.
I'm a cherry snob. I'll be honest.
That's fair.
You could give me lesser end bourbon with a Luxardo in it,
Oh.
and I'm happy.
Yes.
If you give me
Yes.
good bourbon with your random store maraschino, you ruined it for me.
I completely agree. But to your question, back to your question, I'm asking you back to you. Flavor, old fashioned.
I jump at blackberry.
Oh, all right.
I think blackberry. I'm trying to think of what else would. Now that orange vanilla thing, that is
Yeah,
I wouldn't even have guessed.
I know. That's why I'm glad to surprise
Wait,
you.
when you said that, I started just thinking about wild bourbon cocktails I've had, which starts to open up a little
It
bit.
does, yeah.
You might not think there's a grapefruit
Oh yeah,
bourbon
I've
cocktail. I think is a phenomenal.
I've had a grapefruit cocktail that's been fantastic.
And I was just very surprised that how do these two things go together? Which gets back to the whole exploring your senses thing, right? You didn't even know these two things went together.
I listen. There is one. We'll promote. We'll go into it. This is a whole other episode, but we'll go into there are specific simples and bitters, syrups and bitters, not simples, but I guess syrups and bitters that I think are phenomenal for cocktails. And then there are some in my experience that fall very short that people pay way too much money for. But that's a whole other episode. But before we let you go on this one, I asked you a question earlier to mull over. It's not what's your favorite bourbon. This one was, how about the top 3? We're going to get this out of an early episode. We're early on in the podcast, but what are your top? Give me some price ranges. I said 50 and under, 50 to 150, and then, or did I say 50 to 200?
0 to 50, 50 to 2.
50 to 2 and 200 and up.
And
Go ahead with
over-
your 3, and then I'll give you mine.
So 9 bottles. Wow.
3 bottles.
Well, 3 bottles per category times 3 if I'm doing the math. right.
I said 3 bottles, one in each category.
One in each category. Wow, I'm
Jeez.
putting way too much thought into this.
He's an engineer, folks.
All right. Bottle under $50. I'm going to cheat a little bit because I
Fine.
know the real price for this. Four Roses Small Batch Select I'm
Okay.
going to put in my lower tier
Sure.
collection. Everybody's like, oh, just pick single barrel. It's different.
It is absolutely
It's
different.
different.
I've already mentioned mine.
So, you want me to go through all three?
Well, hold on. I've already mentioned mine. You already know mine. I.W. Harper, small batch, not the 15. I.W. Harper, 2-year probably, barely got to the 2-year mark. $26. Yeah, I know the price, and it's all over the country. It's roughly, if you're paying more than $30, you're paying too much. But I.W. Harper, small batch, bourbon out of Tennessee, but it's my number. It's my
Quick
low end.
tangent. Do you like anything else from I.W. Harper?
I do.
Okay. Because
I do.
If somebody asked me if you like something else, I'd be like, I don't think so. I think like that's his one.
Their new cab cask is pretty good.
Yeah, you gotta use cab to fix it. Okay. All right.
Go now 50 to 200.
To 200. Wow, that opens it up big time. Last episode we had one that I think is a contender for this with Bardstown Discovery, Discovery 4. That hits around $135 out the door. Is that the best for under $200?
Maybe.
Boy, if I'm struggling this hard to think of a real contender to fight it. I also think in terms of attainability. You know,
So do I.
you can get it for price A,
My answer is going to be attainable.
but you really need it for price B.
That's okay. We're not going to hold you to it. We're not going to hold you to it.
No, you can hold me. You can drown me in that. I'll take it.
Mine is Woodford Double Oaked, $69.99. Great bottle.
It costs that much?
Maybe it's $64.99, but it's 60. It's in the 60s. Maybe $55.99. I don't know. It's above $50. Pretty sure it's 65. But regardless, semantics.
How much is double oaked?
Well, don't start me down that path.
I'm
But
just saying.
double oaked is fantastic. But double oaked, for people who want recommendations and attainability, that's a great one. Last one. Price is no option. Secondary, primary, doesn't matter. Give me whatever it is. Give me your man, Garrett. If I could just have all of these bottles at this price, even if it's at cost, this is what I want. Mind you, price doesn't always denote flavor and how well you like it. But go ahead. Over $200.
So this is a thing, right? Like I would struggle to walk into a store and point at things that cost over $200.
So this one is mine is a unicorn. Mine's unattainable. You already know what mine is. I'll go first on this one. Mine is Blade and Bow 22. It comes out once a year. They release a bottle a day at the distillery during, I think, like Bourbon Fest or something in Kentucky. And then they pick a state and dump bottles. This is a true story. I had a friend in Virginia who was like, yeah, had it down the road. It was there 2 weeks in a row. Blade and Bow 22. I think the retail is $499.99. If I'm not, I could be pulling that price out of nowhere, but it was $450 to $500. That's MSRP. That is, for those of you who don't know, if you were to point a gun at my head, that would be my favorite bourbon.
So I started to think about what are the most obscenely priced bourbons, and Mr. Sam and Old Fashioned, Copper, and Double Eagle, very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things start to jump into my mind.
Sure.
Like, but I don't even know how good they are.
I know, so I'm asking you, if 200 and up, what's your hey, I'm going to grab this bottle every time.
If I have to pay for it, I guess Dever is not the answer.
By the way, I would grab Blade and Bow 22 every time.
I don't know that I have.
I would make something work. I would open up a credit card or something. I don't know. I would make it so I could get them.
That sounds dangerous. I think you need therapy. I guess I don't have an answer, and that might be a good thing.
You have an answer. Come on.
So
I'm looking at one right now that I know that it is over $200.
So retail MSRP or what it would cost me to get it.
Sure. Let's go with both.
If it on what it would cost me to get it, I think there are phenomenal Weller foolproof picks out in the world.
Exactly. That's what I was just looking at. I knew
and,
you loved.
And yeah, the good ones are great. The bad ones are pretty good. So I would not be depressed if that was what I was forced to drink the rest of my life.
Okay. I'm satisfied with that answer. I was twisting your arm. See, isn't it annoying when somebody puts you into a corner and says you have to answer that question?
If you had to spend money you don't have, what would you spend it on?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Ask something other than what's your favorite bourbon. That's my hope for all of you out there. We gave you some options to ask instead of what's your favorite. Oh man, there's just so many other ways to go about doing this. And if you're new into the bourbon world and you're just trying to get a sense of what they like, ask them those other questions. What did you buy last? What did you take a chance on? And what didn't you like? We didn't even touch on that. What did you buy that you didn't like? What should I avoid? And we all know that everybody's palate's different, but I think those are all great questions to ask. Try something different. Don't just be like every other person and say, what's your favorite? Or use my line that I stole from an old man and just say whichever one's in my glass if you're feeling a little spunky. That being said, I have nothing left in my glass. And I think that's a great segue into saying, Nick, I'll see you next time on the 3BA podcast. Thanks for coming out. Let's drink some bourbon. Cheers.
Cheers.